Hey, Dylan and Max, found myself as a default chief pilot for a corporate flight department flying a TBM 910 for a company. Any advice or big do's and don'ts would be amazing. Context, I'm a 20 military officer, not aviation. I'm a 20-year-old, you think, or 20-year?
I think 20-year would be my guess.
Learned how to fly 3 years ago. Got the job offer at around 330 hours total time. Commercial, single engine land, IFR, commercial multi, IFR. All the advice about networking cannot be overstated for those saying jobs aren't out there. Offered just shy of 100K, so I feel some definite imposter syndrome. Thanks for the help. Happy to add in some context if needed. All right.
Wow.
Well, you found yourself in an awesome opportunity with relatively low experience. You know what that means? That means you have to work twice as hard to be good at the job. Sex, seniority, and salary in that order.
Back on. You're on 121.5, the emergency frequency.
It's a show by professional pilots for professional pilots.
I looked back at them and I said, I don't think we're at the right airport. And they go, I don't think we are either.
Each episode, we bring you fascinating conversations with industry experts.
I think I should be a go-to on how to deal with 63, 64-year-old men.
You're going to chase it like a dog chasing a school bus.
But we're not just about the serious stuff. We're here to have fun.
And I like to sit with pilots a lot of times. I always say they're better looking than Tom Cruise.
It's a whole thing.
The 21.5 Professional Pilots Podcast is your destination for everything aviation, whether you're cruising in the flight levels or just starting your journey.
We're doing it live from the hotel. Different hotels, different states. We're back. This is the 21.5 show. Professional pilots being professional pilots currently on trips.
On trips. What time zone are you in, Max?
I don't know. No, I'm in Central.
Okay, me too. So we're aligned on our circadian rhythms are aligned.
Oh, yeah. I've had a very dirty East Coast AM, though.
Oh.
I think my alarm was set at 3 a.m. local time today. It's rough. But you know what the silver lining on this trip is? I had to go in and out of DCA twice. I felt like I was back at the regional level at American Eagle.
Oh, yeah.
But I escaped relatively unscathed, but except for the 30 minutes of holding yesterday, 100 miles from the airport. But
that's fine.
Yeah, but tomorrow I fly the early flight from Kansas City and land in Phoenix at 7:40 a.m. and I'm done. So
that is the nice thing of the
it's a 48-hour 3-day.
Yeah.
It's pretty good
that's
deal.
Nice. Yeah. 3 days and 2. I love it.
Anyway, enough about me, Dylan. What are you doing?
Hello, my name is Dylan. I'm a pilot in business aviation. I'm on the business aviation side of things today, Max. Enjoying a little, just like a relaxing one leg to the hotel. Maybe go grab some dinner with our rental car.
Jeez,
That's nice. A different type.
The silver lining on the flip side, of my early finish tomorrow is that I get done at 7:40, but I'm not going home. I'm going to run over to my paid seat on American Airlines and fly to Dallas to then pick up the 280 from maintenance and fly it home.
Well, it's funny because we got a listener email about that. So we'll have to read that and you can talk more about it. Here you go. So you're just a wandering man.
Yeah, I know. There's only somebody that can screw up an early morning return on the last day. It's me.
Yeah, you found a way.
Still going to manage to get back in the afternoon.
Well, this is the show for professional pilots. If you can't tell, Max and Dylan are your hosts. We are going to get into it today. We took a little bit of time off. Thank you for bearing with us. We took a little family vacation. There's nothing better than combining all of your family under one roof. Very relaxing.
Super relaxing. Actually, I had to come to work to get a vacation from my vacation.
Yeah. Right, exactly. Yeah.
It's much more relaxing.
Much more relaxing. But
doesn't mean it wasn't a lot of fun. It just
yeah.
wasn't a lot of relaxing.
Exactly. So maybe we'll chat about that in a little bit, but lots to get to today. Fortunately, you've continued to accumulate some musings. I've got a couple things I want to touch on. So I say we just jump right into it because it's been a long day. We need to get this show on the road.
Let's go.
All right. I am opening the musings. For if you're new to the show, this is where Max writes down things while he's staring into the abyss at cruise at 36,000 feet and contemplating
No,
different
it's
things
mostly
he
because I'm
encounters?
getting old and I forget stuff. And so if things pop into my mind, I will forget. So I jot them down on a note in my iPhone. That's the reality of
I thought you were just sitting
matter.
there with nothing to do, and you.
Everyone thinks I'm like weaving a tapestry of thoughts here.
Yeah.
It's not. It's something pops in my head. I have to write it down before I forget.
You write it down. Okay.
So,
Well, what's the first thing says NTSB LRD? What's that?
all right. So do you remember the whole thing with somebody wrote in and asked, and we talked about it on the LRD, which is the load reduction device on these new LEAP motors that are on the 320neo and the 737 MAX, right? Because they eat a bird, and to prevent the fan from coming apart, essentially they have the system, but the bad thing is that it dumps all the oil into the compressor section.
Right.
And so creating a bunch of smoke real fast that can fill the cockpit, especially really fast, depending on which engine it is. I mean, at least on a 737. So this has been a thing, right? That it's like, well, we need to do something about it. So the NTSB, looked into it and has made their recommendations. While vague, what they basically said is that they're going to require all operators so they're going to have training, for the flight crews, so they know about this. Boeing's going to revise the flight manuals detailing the steps to take to prevent smoke from entering the cockpit or the cabin following LRD activation. But also they're going to ask the FAA and EASA to require all operators of the affected engines to incorporate software modifications developed by CFM and Boeing. They don't say what those are, but you have to assume that it's something that's going to automatically trip the pack offline or something like that, right?
Oh.
Because it's going to be tough to implement some sort of memory item or anything like that, because you just ate a bird, which typically happens at very low altitude, right? And so your hands are going to be pretty full. And anyway, it just kind of seems like the FAA is trending towards automatic intervention in these issues. That's why the same thing. One of the holdups of the new 737 MAX 7 is there's this like thing. If you leave the engine anti-ice heat on too long, and when it's warm, it can cause major damage to the engine inlet. And so instead of having a limitation for the flight crew to intervene like we do on the MAX 8, not to leave the engine anti-ice on when it's not warranted. They want some sort of automatic function, assumably based on TAT, where it won't it turns it off automatically or whatever.
And then there'll be some incident where the TAT will malfunction and it'll shut it off and they're in the ice. And it's just.
Yeah. But anyway, I just think that it was kind of a big thing. You're like, wow, this happened at Southwest specifically twice. One out of New Orleans and the other one out of Havana. So it's good though. I mean, recommend the NTSB makes recommendations. People typically listen to that. So
I would actually disagree with that. I think they make a lot of recommendations, and sometimes the FAA does not do what they say.
Well, I guess, yeah, you're right. You do have a point.
Okay. I have not done a ton of research on this 787 crash in India, I'll be honest. I've read a couple posts. I've seen a few things. Have you done a deep dive or heard anybody really get into this?
No. And I always kind of am very, very hesitant to speculate on what happens in an aviation accident, especially to, put the blame on the pilots that a lot of people like to do, which in this case though, dude, it sure looks like the guy lost thrust on both motors.
That's what it looked like to me.
He made a radio call about losing thrust. The rat deployed. People said that the lights flickered, when the generators were coming offline. So I was talking about this. Well, so I did my first takeoff on this trip after I haven't flown since this thing happened, right? And we rotated out of Phoenix, to the east. And I was like, man, if you lost both motors, what would you do right now?
Tempe Town Lake, baby.
Yeah, you'd have to sully it into the lake or into the wash before the or after the lake when it's typically dry or whatever. But I mean, what if that happened in Midway, dude? Or that would just be a terrible feeling. So I asked the cat. We were talking about it too. After that, I was like, "Did you see that Air India thing?" But we were talking. What could make two engines fail on a 787 simultaneously?
I mean, the most obvious thing to me is some type of fuel contamination, but that doesn't seem.
But simultaneously,
exactly. Well, I mean, this is getting back to that Challenger crash in Naples.
that seems like the more
super fishy. No one has come out and said what happened there. I have my suspicions on what happened. But yeah, we went through this same thought exercises. How do two engines fail at the exact same time?
Yeah, it's really without shutting the fuel levers or
yeah.
I mean, dude, like I don't know. That's why this one is just so wacky to me. And again, I'm not saying that's what happened. Who knows? But it will be interesting to see what the flight data recorder says on that and the cockpit voice recorder that they've already recovered.
It's a good thought experiment. You bring up a good point, though, and I've been practicing this sim more and more often. I've talked about this on the show before. Every time I'm at the sim, I try to get a low altitude dual engine failure after takeoff. And a sim instructor actually showed me the technique. Now, this was more of a sim technique, and I don't know if it would work, but basically the impossible turn.
Yeah.
He said at a certain altitude you can make the turn, but what he did was actually got up and pitched for the best glide speed for a second and then turned the airplane but did a nosedive and like dove for the ground and then got into ground effect
and skated along.
and skated along to get back, and it worked in the sim. But it was just funny because it's like that would be the last thing you'd be thinking about, right? And it would depend on the airplane and everything else. But like he was like, no, just hammer it and then like try and glide down. And I was like, it's interesting. I mean,
it's a bold move, Cotton.
Yeah, we are, and the 21.5 podcast is not endorsing that maneuver.
We're not advocating the engine out, enter ground effect like the Russian chronoplane.
Yeah, exactly.
And, across the Caspian Sea.
Yeah, float down. But
do you know what I'm talking about when I say that?
You
have no idea? The Russian sea monster? You never learned about this?
Oh, in what? Russian seaplane class? I didn't take that.
No, it was a
riddle.
huge Google the Caspian Sea monster. You got to see this thing. It was this massive. It's not an airplane because it was made to just ride in ground effect across the Caspian Sea.
Caspian Sea monster.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's like a hovercraft or something.
No, it was made to fly in ground effect.
A ground effect vehicle.
Yeah, a ground effect vehicle. Is that what it's called?
Yeah, also known as an acronoplane. I've never heard that term before. I'm sorry.
Unbelievable. You call yourself
sorry, listeners. Okay, interesting. Yeah.
Anyway, we'll post a link to that. We don't have time for your listening research right now. If we had Reggie on here, he could explain everything to you.
We're working on. We did a big introduction of Reggie, and then we don't have the technology to use him anymore. So great move on our part.
We should just ask Reggie how to integrate him when we're on the road.
I tried. We could have him call in.
We'll get there.
Reggie will be back. I've been playing some fun games with Reggie. We did a game with the kids the other day. Super fun. If you've got an AI that, especially in voice mode, you like tell him you're doing a drawing contest and that he has to be the judge and like give awards out to every drawing. And then you're like, all right, give us a silly image. And he'll like say, all right, draw, like a monkey on a swing set holding a birthday cake or something. So you draw these like pretty terrible images. And then you like upload photos of all of them and they'll like review. And he'd be like, this one wins the award for best monkey toes or like best cake candles. It's so funny to see what it does. But my children are really entertained by it. So give it a try sometime.
Many things you can do with the large language models.
Exactly. It still isn't not doing the dishes, cutting the lawn, or taking the trash out, unfortunately.
That's next.
Which are the things I would hope for, but someday. All right. Next thing on the Musings, YouTube exchange.
Oh, yeah. So we're on this trip together, Dylan and I, and everybody has since gone to bed. So it's just he and I left with our beers at that point, sitting there. And I'm like, hey, let's each pick an aviation YouTube video. This sounds so bad when you say it back.
Just a couple guys and some brews
a couple
on
dudes
the couch,
drinking beers,
kicking back,
exchanging YouTube video suggestions. So we watched. So I'm like, have you ever really watched Trent Palmer? And Trent Palmer does these YouTube backcountry flying videos. You know, he just got a new plane. It's the whole thing. But the thing about Trent Palmer, sometimes it's a little cringy and stuff. But I tell you what, his video and
Production
editing
quality
and all that stuff is really good.
Yeah.
Like, and it's hard to appreciate until you've actually attempted to do it on your own a little bit. Like with the music and everything, it's really good. So we watched the Trent Palmer. Unfortunately, it wasn't his best representation because it was like taking his wife flying and she puked and it was a whole disaster. But anyway, so my pick was Trent Palmer. What did you think of Trent Palmer? And
that was great. I mean, I have watched some of his videos before. I don't watch
he's
every
popular,
single one, but they're all cool. Like you said, they're really well done. And I guess my problem is I just don't watch a ton of aviation videos in general. But
that's why you don't know what the Chronoplan is.
Exactly. That's my problem. My kids love watching the Daily Dose of the Internet. Do you ever watch that? That's what they love to watch that every night. So then I had a turn and I picked the only aviation YouTube channel I watch, which is Cockpit Casual. And if you haven't seen Cockpit Casual, that is made by the guys who own the Nomadic ferry company, where they basically do these long haul ferry flights of airliners.
And when we say long haul,
like
we're
long
talking
haul,
two dudes in a narrow body, like from Asia to the East Coast.
The one we watched, they got it out of China and they just said, all right, we're not stopping until we get to like Maine.
Yeah.
And they just,
two dudes with a bunch of stops, like
fuel stops, or that's it.
20 hours of flight. It's ridiculous.
It's unbelievable. I mean, and that's just one example of what they did.
They just do it all the time.
Yeah.
And they just show up to these planes. They have no database.
Yeah.
They're just typing in lat longs of everything, like user-defined waypoints for everything. It's just these old clapped, like airplanes are literally, it's the last flight because they're taking it to part it out. So it's an old clapped out Airbus that's been flying around China for 1 million years. It's crazy.
It really is crazy. And I mean, just the amount of you really get an appreciation for the amount of paperwork they have to get through and the legal hurdles and like all of these different things that the logistics of moving these planes is insane. One of the cool ones you haven't seen, they were doing like they were taking these Latin American airplanes and converting them into freighters, and the conversion was going on in Asia. And so they like took off out of like Chile or Argentina and like went over the South Pole and then like worked their way, I think through like Australia and up to Asia that way. It was just like, they're just doing routes that you've never even seen. But the other thing too,
these dudes
before.
are flying A320, 737, 767, 787, like
tons of different types ratings.
I don't even understand how they're current. Like it's intense.
Yeah. Really,
we
really
gotta get one of those guys on the show sometime.
I've been trying for about 1.5 years.
You've been writing them emails or what?
Yeah, I actually got a hold of Steve at one point, and I was like, "Can you please come on the show? Like, we will figure it out. Like, whatever we need to do." And they're just
he's the one that lives in Phoenix.
No, that's Bob. I think lives in Phoenix.
Yeah, that is Bob.
So if any of you know Steve or Bob, please
we
put in a good word for us. We want to talk to them too.
We got to figure out what sort of stimulants these guys are using to do these flights, because it's unbelievable.
Unreal. And they have, I think they bought a Westwind. So now their company operates a Westwind to like move crews and parts and stuff around. Yeah, it's pretty cool. Should have been an MU2. That would have been unbelievable.
Yeah.
But all right. So leading into that's been our YouTube exchange. I want to talk about a TV show for a minute here. Maybe you've seen this. I want to assign a little viewing, if you're brave, to watching this show called The Rehearsal, specifically season 2 on HBO. So I'm just going to preface this by saying this is a weird show. There are some very weird parts. Do not watch this with your kids around. The comedian Nathan Fielder, who created the show, is a very unique individual. A lot of the show is very awkward and not that funny. It's kind of strange, but season 2 is focused all on aviation, specifically airline pilots. And I don't know how much I should actually talk about the show or just sort of like
Well, just tell about the aviation side of it so people will actually watch it.
Okay. So Nathan
right
Fielder,
now you've made it just sound incredibly awkward and weird.
Nathan Fielder is this comedian adjacent person who became fascinated with aviation accidents and started studying all of these accidents and realized that he believes that a lot of accidents could have been prevented by the first officer being assertive and speaking up to the captain and saying, hey, what we're doing is wrong. We need to do this, or you're doing something that you shouldn't be doing. And instead they are like letting the captain continue on the wrong path. And so he actually presents this to John Golia, who is a former NTSB and also has the Flight Safety Detectives podcast. And so he's a very reputable person. So he presents these ideas and then they come up with some ways. Nathan Fielder comes up with some ways to help first officers become more assertive. And he does this in some very bizarre ways. And it's only 6 episodes. They're only 30 minutes each. So it's not like a huge ask.
I have not watched.
You've only watched 1 episode, right?
1 episode. And
I finished it yesterday. The last episode is going to blow you away.
More than the keeper?
Especially you. It's a different angle. But yeah, it's going to be, it's interesting.
Right. I'm going to get started on this tonight.
He took like a regional FO who was like having like relationship problems with his girlfriend and was like afraid to like verbalize his problems, that he would like tell his girlfriend this stuff. And he like figured out a way through like being in a simulator cockpit to like get this guy to like have these awkward conversations with his
girlfriend in the captaincy. It was bizarre,
strange,
but it was actually like,
but it's working. And I'll tell you, the thing is that I will say something bizarre like that could be the way that you could find a solution to some of these problems. It's an outside the box approach is what he's taking. And believe me, like, do not think that I endorse all of the things he's trying to do. But I think if you take the good with the bad of the show and you're like, there's some interesting truths that maybe he's uncovering, I think it might get you thinking a little bit. So again, it's definitely PG-13.
Right.
It's weird.
I'll get after it tonight. We'll check it out.
Let me know after you watch the last episode. Is definitely the.
I won't be able to because we'll have to talk about it on this dumb show we've created.
Yeah.
So we can't ever talk about anything organically anymore because it has to be done on here.
Roy's a big fan. Roy's going to come on with us, I think. He's got a lot of thoughts and good. Like I think we'll have a good conversation. So, anyways, enough about the rehearsal.
No, Roy's going to lambaste me about putting bedliner on my Alaskan bush wheels. He already did. Tell me you're a cheap airline pilot without telling me you're a cheap airline pilot.
Oh, is that what Roy said to you?
Yeah.
Shout out Roy. Okay.
I said yes, I am, and I'm proud. Leave me alone.
Okay. Do you want to talk any more about the bedliner? So do you want to post any photos of how that went? No. Okay. We'll save that for another day.
we'll get to that another time.
All right. Anything else? Any other musings before we move on to?
No. I mean, I didn't even fly since the last episode. Barely.
Okay. All right. Okay. Well, let's get on to some of the reviews here. We got a couple new reviews. I'll let you tackle the first one, and then I'll read number 2.
Best aviation podcast. I just discovered your podcast through one of my instructors, and I'm currently binging it. Cheers from Switzerland. Niner the deer. I don't know what that means.
Like it? I don't know. Lost in translation there. Second review says, can't get any better than these guys. Love this show. These guys always pick such relevant topics, answer thoughtfully, and present so authentically with humility. Max. Did you hear that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, the sneaky kind of funny you love. No wonder this podcast comes up so often at the FBO. I look forward to every new episode and will happily keep working my way back in the archives. Thanks for putting together such amazing content, you guys. That's from Katie Travels with Alex and D, I think. Thank you, Katie. Thank you, Niner the Deer. We'd love to send you some stickers to show our appreciation for the review. Just shoot us an email, info@215podcast.com with your mailing address, and we'll get those out as quick as we can. I'm going to skip the YouTube reviews today, Max, just because we've got not a lot of time. We got to get you to bed.
All right.
So
we'll look forward to those next.
Lots to talk about in the mailbag, and you know that the mailbag is, of course, brought to you by our friends at Advanced Aircrew Academy. Aircrewacademy.com is the website to check out everything they've put together for professional pilots. I looked at a module maybe we should have taken before going on that family vacation. It was entitled CRM Human Factors Stress Management. And there were a couple stressful moments on our trip. Could have used to de-escalate some. We had a little rental car fiasco. I accidentally booked a car in the wrong city.
Professional traveler here.
Yeah, professional traveler, blew that one. What else? What other snafus did I have? I guess that was the main. I checked a new airport off the box, Fargo, North Dakota.
Oh,
have you been in? Do you guys
good
serve
for
Fargo?
you.
It's funny because shout out to Allegiant, who we often use because they have a base in Phoenix. But Fargo is like the exact city you'd think that Allegiant serves, right? You know, because there's so many different, people getting out of the cold weather into the warm weather. That place was like an Allegiant hub. They served like 9 cities out of there. It was hilarious. Like Phoenix, probably a few places in Florida, Vegas, Nashville, where else? But I mean, it was just funny because you can just imagine all these people by about February being like, that's it, I'm out of here. You know, like, take me somewhere warm, you know?
Where can we get a cheap flight?
Yeah. And Allegiant's like, I got you. So I don't know how our ad read for Advanced Aircrew Academy turned into a advertisement for Allegiant Airlines, but it did. Anyways, stress management, just one of the many modules available at Advanced Aircrew Academy. Their incredible training programs are available for your flight department.
And if you're listening to this and you are a slacker Part 91 pilot that only goes to recurrent and doesn't do anything else to stay on top of things, I challenge you to go to Advanced Aircrew Academy, select 3 modules, and complete them.
Maybe you want to learn about the continuous descent final approach?
Please.
Perhaps dangerous goods and hazmat. I don't know.
Bring it on. Mm-hmm. Keep going.
You have to be
anything you want.
That's right. Aircrewacademy.com is the website. On to the mailbag. Maxwell, go ahead.
Hey, guys. Really enjoy listening to your podcast. This question is for Max. Max, you've mentioned multiple times that while you fly for SWA, you also do some corporate flying. Curious how you manage the logistics of this from a schedule perspective. Also curious how you keep your hand in 91 flying while flying for a 121 carrier. Know a couple of guys who do this, and they usually say that they, quote, manage the airplane and are paid for management as opposed to flying in order to keep things legal. I think that keeping a hand in both parts of the industry is great, and I want to get a better understanding of how this is accomplished in case an opportunity presents itself. Thanks, Ben. All right. I was explaining this today to the dude I'm flying with right now. But basically, I think that I have a special opportunity here in that, one, I fly for an airline that has a provision to allow you for what's called outside flying. So they approve it. I send a letter. The VP of Flight Ops approved my outside flying. And there's some stipulations in the FOM, the Flight Ops manual you have to follow, yada, yada. And so that, coupled with the fact that Southwest Airlines has, 11,000 pilots, we all fly the 737, and we have a really good system in which to move your schedule around to suit your needs. Those two things from the airline perspective make it possible to do what I do on the corporate side. And I think that at another airline, it may be very challenging. If you commute, it would probably be impossible. Like, there's a lot of factors here that have worked out. And on the corporate side, it's Part 91, which is the only allowed. You can't fly 135 or whatever, typically, at least, and certainly in my situation. It's Part 91, and it's a low, what I say is a low utilization Part 91 flight department. We don't fly a ton, and those exist. You've had several of those. We just don't fly a ton. Which, if you fly a ton, it would be really hard and had a lot of overnights. We don't have a ton of overnights. It's a lot of day trips. And so the unique schedule on both sides, I'm able to make it work. And for the most part, it works pretty good, because if I have a corporate trip that conflicts with my airline schedule, I try and move my airline schedule. And if I can't, then, I've just been very honest and upfront with the owner and say, hey, like, sometimes it won't always work out. And he's okay with that. And we find somebody else to fly. But that doesn't happen very often. And so what I'm trying to say is that it's a unique circumstance on both ends that allows it to work. And I think it would be hard for me to replicate again to find the right.
You have
now, there are
like
other 91
things.
flying jobs out there that I know of personally that would work with this too, potentially, but not a lot.
I would say, you've got the perfect storm, right? You got to live in base, you got to fly for an airline that allows it, you got to have an owner that's cool with it, and you got to have a low utilization things. I mean, so the odds of that happening. I would say the other thing, back to the listener's question of how they would like to, maybe do that. You're going to probably have to already have experience in business aviation to be able to do something like this. If you were just an airline guy and you're like, oh, I'd like to go out and get a corporate job on the side, that's with no corporate experience or business aviation experience previous, that's probably not going to happen unless you've got, somebody. Like it's going to be the likely scenario is I was in business aviation. I went to the airlines. I'm able to still do some business aviation stuff. And that I would say in Phoenix, especially with Southwest people, there's probably a handful of people to do it.
Yeah, and not even just
in
Phoenix. I mean, I've talked to other people, and it's a thing that's done. Some people just do contract flying. It just depends.
It just depends.
But people do all kinds of things. Sets the DPE, like there's all kinds of stuff. So, and it's cool. And I think it's really cool that they give you the opportunity because it'd be very easy for them to just say, "Oh no, you're ours. That's it."
Yeah,
because
that's what most airlines. I would say most airlines do that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, but it's just one of those things. It's not a lot of benefit, but it says even in the book, it's like I can't remember exactly what the verbiage is, but it just says something to the fact that like, hey, we see that people want to do this. We want to have a policy that allows this to happen, and it could change if it becomes a problem. Essentially, is what it's saying. But they went out of their way to put the provisions in there to allow people to do it, and I think that's cool, and that's really cool. One of the reasons I work here because they do cool stuff like that.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, but it was funny because I had this like very similar conversation flying today from DCA to Kansas City or whatever. And the interesting part of while flying at the airlines, flying corporate Part 91 and flying the Cub all at the same time is it's like these three very different types of, so flying at the airlines, I fly a lot. I get to do a lot of instrument approaches and a lot of winter weather and rain and all kinds of conditions. And so I'm more comfortable than I've ever been flying in weather. Right. Where in business aviation, we just didn't do a lot, especially flying out of Scottsdale. We didn't fly a lot of approaches in a year. So now like I'm super used to that. So then when we do it in the business jet, I've done it a million times already this year, so I'm really comfortable in the weather, more so than I used to be. But also in the Part 91 flying, you fly into a lot more dynamic environments and airports and a lot more, visual approaches that aren't you flying an ILS or a visual approach backed up with the ILS or an RMP, Zulu, or, Zulu approach or
with
whatever.
Approach mode armed. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, right. And where you actually have to like look outside and fly and there's no even approach to back it up with like every time we land in Scottsdale or whatever.
Yeah.
Not that it's like a super challenging thing, but it's just a different and dynamic environment. And that environment, I turn the flight directors off 20 miles out and fly it in, which is something we don't do at Southwest, right? Just a different deal. So I get that like kind of, I don't know, airmanship stuff. Visually flying in a jet, which is a different thing than it is flying in a Cub visually, right? But then that flying too is very different, but also very, you can make it very challenging by going to challenging airstrips or landing not on airports and doing things like that. So I think all those things combined, like right now, it's probably the best I will ever be at flying. I feel like, which doesn't mean I'm the best by any stretch, but for me, it's probably the best.
Just realize your full potential.
Yeah, I think so because like doing it all at the same time.
I think the only thing we could left to do is like get you into some type of glider situation.
Yeah, I don't have the time for that.
Spotting thermals and no. Okay.
It's just a weird situation I found myself in. And I was thinking about it while I was talking to them. I'm like, it's
true.
Probably all downhill from here, really.
I would imagine. I mean, I don't know. I mean, you have to like, you could It sounds like Ted's skills are pretty sharp. Flying the long haul.
Ted's sleeping skills
Ted's
are
pretty dialed.
really sharpened.
Got that, folding that fitted sheet in there. Pretty interesting. It's got a dial. All right. Next email. Thank you for reading like the 5th email down the list to screw us up here. Appreciate that. All right. A lot of real serious stuff going on in aviation nowadays. Legacies are essentially done hiring for the time. ULCCs are struggling with furloughs and leaves. But there's one bright ray of sunshine, and it's the summer's hottest banger, Furlough Flute by Dylan's son, featuring Donovan Batiste. That's the listener Anthony remix. Shout out to Anthony. Which straddles the intersection of danceable rhythms and beachside serenity with effortless verve. From the moment the track opens with mellow flautist tones, listeners are transported to a sun-drenched coastline where the only thing stronger than the beat is the sense of calm. Whether you're stuck instructing in the pattern in Phoenix, slinging gear on RJ overnights in Altoona, as you start wondering when to call yourself a life, or regretting your illusion that your awesome ULCC schedule would last a career, this track is a perfect companion to balance your sorrows with some pure sweetness. Keep up the good work. That's from Frank.
Shout out Gavin.
Yeah. Frank.
Dear Dylan and Max, if you're looking for a new sunscreen, I highly recommend Sky and Soul. It's a mineral sunscreen that uses beef tallow. It's not greasy and does not leave a white cast. I use the SPF 30 on the daily and the sunscreen lip balm. The SPF 50 is a little thick in my opinion and does leave a bit of a white cast. Keep up the great work. And that's from Casey. I've never used a mineral sunscreen that doesn't leave a white cast. So
I have been using a new one by it's called, I got to look this up. Sorry, I got to vamp here for a second.
Yeah, everybody's on the edge of their seat here.
Kelly Slater, the professional surfer, he created a mineral sunscreen, and I've been using it, and it's great, and it does not leave much white. It is called Freaks of Nature, which is also a good one. So now we got to try Casey's. It is not made with beef.
Who would have known? We would have started such a interactive sunscreen discussion.
Yeah, exactly. Casey, thank you for letting us know. We'll have to try that.
$30. It's actually not that bad too.
Yeah.
All right. What's next?
Let's see here. Hey guys, really enjoy.
That's the one I just read. It's my turn. No, it's your turn. Sorry. Go ahead.
Hey guys, just wanted to send a quick update since it came up this week. Oh, this is from Nate with the high school girlfriend. Remember?
Nate Dogg with the high school girl.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Just wanted to send a quick update since it came up this week. I passed my CFI initial about 2 weeks ago and was officially hired as a flight instructor at the same company where I've been working line service. My title of high school flight instructor was short-lived, though. Graduation is this weekend. My next goal is to knock out my CFII by the end of June and follow it up with commercial multi soon after. Any advice for a brand new CFI would be much appreciated. And yes, in case you're still wondering, I still have the girlfriend. Thanks.
Yeah.
The guy with the girlfriend that was in high school.
Prove the haters wrong, Nate.
I like it, Nate.
Good for you.
You chart your own course. I like it. What advice do you have for a new CFI? Well, first of all, Nate, hopefully you've listened to that episode we did with Seth Lake, because there was some good nuggets in there for a new CFI. What do you remember from your first instructing days?
What I was thinking about is we didn't really have like iPhones back then.
No.
Like, dude, I was thinking about that. Don't be looking at your phone. Don't get distracted. Those kids will try and kill you.
Yeah.
Like, keep your phone in your pocket. Pay attention. That's my advice. Pay attention. Be vigilant. The students are trying to kill you.
I think this will be an interesting lesson for you in assertiveness, planning, and especially at your young age, the dynamics of instructing someone that's older than you. I think you're gonna develop a lot personally and professionally, and it may not be your stick and rudder skills as a CFI right now, but there's going to be a lot of like personal growth. I think I would say you're going to be stretched in ways you were not stretched before, and I think you just embrace that. And yeah, stay off your phone, I guess. He's just graduated high school. He may not even have a phone yet, Max.
He's going to get stretched in ways he's never been stretched. What kind of flight school is this?
I'm talking about like a mentally and professional.
Yeah, whatever. Yeah, no, the thing too with flight instructing is if somebody's not getting it,
Yeah.
teach them a different way. I remember learning that. Like, not everybody learns the same way you've been doing it. And sometimes them not getting it is up to you to figure out how to teach it to them differently so they get it. And the other thing too, I would say, is people that are struggling continually, one of the things that you have to have when you're flying an airplane is some confidence. You don't have to be overly confident, but you have to have confidence in that you know what you're doing. And when students lose confidence, they can't put one foot in front of the other, and they just continually screw up. And sometimes you have to go back like a few steps and let them do something they can already do, and then kind of make a big deal about them doing that well to then move forward past whatever the roadblock is. So that was another thing I remember learning. I'm like, we need to go back, dude, and just like this kid couldn't figure out how to do a diversion, and like, let's go back to just do basic pilotage and like, take me on this course. And, oh, you found them. Good job, dude. That's the mountain. What's next? Great. Yep. There's the river where it crosses the road. Perfect. Where are we going now? All right. Perfect. And we just did that. And then after that snapped him out, and then we could do diversions and figure it, and it was something like that. So keep those things in mind.
Yeah, that's a really good. The other thing I have experimented with a little bit is using tools. So if you do the fundamentals of instruction, you kind of learn for students, you take them from the known to the unknown. And so like learning about what they're into or what their background is sometimes can be useful, because there might be ways for you to translate their life experience or their experience doing something into aviation. And a great tool to do that with is AI. Now, have you started to play with this at all?
Well, no, I haven't been flight instructing in quite some time.
We're working on. Sorry, we got to get renewed first. But just in general, like, I'm not saying it at the flight instructing application, but with your kids, like if you're trying to explain something to them that maybe they're not getting, you can use like I will go in there and be like, use analogies for this Roblox game to explain this other concept.
We just did that, remember? Yeah, about the stoichiometric ratio we were trying to explain.
Exactly. Yeah, and doing that kind of, those tools were not available before.
No, it's so much easier now.
It's so much more interesting. So I think if you can leverage some of those, now you got to do it right. I mean, it's garbage in, garbage out. So you got to be careful what you do and how you do it. But just the mindset of like you said, people learn differently, and understanding going from the known to the unknown, I think, can be a powerful tool if you can relate it to something they're into.
And like Dylan referenced before too, if you're stretching your students in ways they haven't stretched before,
it's not what
just be gentle. Just be gentle. Be kind.
It's not what I said. All right. Last email. You read this one.
Hey there, G550 captain here. Just thinking about reporting on a descend via or at pilot's discretion. Here's my opinion and what I tell newer pilots in the Gulfstream. AIM 5-3-3, parentheses A1A, states that pilots should report when vacating any previously assigned altitude or flight level for a newly assigned altitude or flight level. In the context of a descend via clearance, ATC has authorized you to descend at your discretion to comply with the published altitude restrictions on an arrival. This clearance effectively assigns you to a block of altitudes, and you're expected to manage your descent within that block. Since there's no specific new altitude assigned at the moment you begin your descent, the requirement to report vacating altitude doesn't apply. Same with PD. You've already confirmed the descent when you acknowledge the clearance. There's no newly assigned altitude to report. Thanks. Love the show. Jeff in Houston. Okay, let's read that one more time. This is what the AIM says. When vacating any previously assigned altitude or flight level for a newly assigned altitude or flight level.
Newly assigned being the operative word. That's okay. An interesting one from Jeff. Max, did we talk about this on the show before?
I think we have, but
we must have, and I believe that's why he's writing in. I would tend to agree with what Jeff's saying. Personally, I don't typically report. We're leaving unless it feels like know this isn't a great answer, but it feels like that would be helpful information to the controller.
Well, yeah, because too much information sometimes is not helpful when things are busy, especially. But, our guidance is the AIM, right? And then the controller's guidance is the FAA order J07110.65, which is kind of their side of the same guidance. And neither that nor the AIM specifically say you have to. They both insinuate when you switch frequencies and you're still at, Albuquerque Center, Southwest whatever's flight level 330 clear to descend via the Eagle 6 runway 26 transition. Like you have to say where you're at and then what your descend via clearance is.
Right.
But it doesn't say anywhere specifically that after you check on like that and then you're flying for 5 minutes and then you decide and then you start your descent out of 330, it doesn't say anywhere you have to report that specifically. It really it keeps saying the word on initial contact.
Yeah.
So I think in both the 7110.65 and the AIM. So I am also of the position that you do not need to report when you're leaving that altitude, unless you're in a non-radar environment. Then you would need to report it.
Yeah, I feel like that some of this stuff was written back when radar coverage was not as good, and so it's just like, is it still there, or these carryovers from another time, But I think we both agree with you, Jeff.
Yeah, and I think that both of the two FAA documents are consistent in that from both sides of the mic.
It's just another great example of we talked to Forrest a couple episodes ago, and he mentioned, there's so much rope to hang yourself, and there's all these different manuals, and do you know all of the different places to look to get your answer? And you might get an answer here that's different from here, whatever, and who's using, if we're using the AIM and the controllers, you're using a different document, do those things match? It's just, there's a lot of rope out there. Okay, that's going to do it for the mailbag, Max. If you want to get involved in the conversation, we love hearing from the listeners. info@215podcast.com is the email address. We'd be happy to read your email live on the show. I do feel bad. We don't do a great job of responding to the emails in text form. We usually just save them to read them on the show. So if you if you're sending us an email and you're expecting an email response, please include that in the email so that we know. Otherwise, we're just saying, okay, good, set this aside. We're going to read it. So, all right. That is going to do it. Up next, Max, some flight advice for you. And that is to visit harveywatt.com to check out all of the coverages that Harvey Watt offers professional pilots. If you watch the rehearsal, you're going to see a little aeromedical stuff in there. And it's just another good reminder of hey, listen, you got to protect this thing. And you got to be smart about using your medical. That's one of the great services that Harvey Watt provides, not only helping you get your license back, but they also help you to keep it. And they have advisors on call that if there's a question or you need guidance on what to do, they can be there to help you navigate still a pretty confusing system. So shout out to those guys for keeping everybody in the air. HarveyWatt.com is the website. Go ahead with flight advice, Max.
Right. Flight advice. Hey, Dylan and Max. Found myself as a default chief pilot for a corporate flight department flying a TBM 910 for a company. Any advice or big do's and don'ts would be amazing. Context, I'm a 20 military officer, not aviation. I'm a 20-year-old, you think, or 20-year?
I think 20-year, but would be my guess.
Learned how to fly 3 years ago. Got the job offer at around 330 hours total time. Commercial, single-engine land, IFR, commercial multi, IFR. All the advice about networking cannot be overstated for those saying jobs aren't out there. Offered just shy of 100K, so I feel some definite imposter syndrome. Thanks for the help. Happy to add in some context if needed. All right.
Wow.
Well, you found yourself in an awesome opportunity with relatively low experience. You know what that means? That means you have to work twice as hard to be good at the job. So over prepare. You have to compensate for the lack of experience, which is fine, but you have to have that mindset. And so you have to compensate with the fact that you haven't been on the block a million times by over preparing. doing things that might feel silly and going to fly in the TBM on Microsoft Flight Sim to the new airport that you haven't been to. So you know where the FBO is and what the approach looks like, and maybe practicing it before you go do it in real life, because 330 hours is not a lot of time. And so study the charts, prepare for the flight beforehand. And I'm assuming you're by yourself in the TBM 910. I mean, I know it's a single pilot airplane, but I'm assuming you don't have somebody in the right seat. So even more so, like prepare, and take all of the questions out of it that you can by preparing early. So that way, when, curveballs are thrown at you, it's less to deal with.
Yeah. I'm going to break some news to you. You are going to have to give the person that you fly for some bad news at some point in your career, probably soon. And you're going to have to tell them no. That is not easy, especially for pilots who love to complete the mission and, be the hero. But you are getting paid to keep the airplane safe, and sometimes, and keep the people safe, more importantly. And sometimes that means that they're going to ask you to do something, and you're going to have to say, we can't do this, but we can do this. And look, don't be offended if that happens. They may just not know, right? So it's your job to be able to say, hey, look, this isn't safe. Now, with 300...
And this is why.
And this is why. So the art of being able to communicate that in a way that is effective is a good lesson to learn early on. So what we mean by that is if the owner says, hey, I want to go to San Diego, and you just say no, the weather's bad or something, but you don't give any context or you don't offer any other options, that's not going to really work, right? So you've got to be able to craft that response in a way that says, look, here are the reasons why we can't do this thing that you're asking, but here are two other options of what we could do safely instead. And so that can be tough. And so learning on your communicating skills to be able to communicate with a principal like that can be a challenge, but definitely it will pay off. And that's going to take some time, because you're going to have to learn the principal's personality and how they respond, how they communicate. Do they like text messages? Do they like emails? Do they like phone calls? Do they want to meet in person? There's just a lot you're going to have to learn that has nothing to do with the airplane. That's one of the other tricks. I would say
there's a lot of people that would just, the being able to tell somebody no is super important. But it would seem obvious that you have to come to that with an alternative scenario to accomplish the goals of the owner. Hey, we can't go now, but we can leave. The weather's supposed to improve at noon. If it does, then we can leave then. But you'd be surprised how many people just say no and then just leave. Oh, we can't do that, and leave it there. That's not the way to do it. So certainly give the option. But another thing that I will leave you with is, so today is June 19th. We're recording this on June 11th. Or was it the 10th? The 10th.
You're talking about the San Diego deal?
Were you going to say this? Yeah. San Diego, this twin Cessna 414 crashed with 6 people. A dad and his kids, and the dude was flying with his wife. And again, the NTSB report obviously is not out, but you can look at the ADSB tracks and listen to the ATC and
listen to the previous flight.
Well, watch the approach into San Diego. This guy flew into San Diego, stayed there, and then took off and crashed on departure, essentially. And it's very apparent that this dude was in way over his head, unfortunately. I mean, he was zigging and zagging down the final approach course. And he, on the radio, he keyed the mic that he was struggling, and he entered the water at a very high rate of descent at a very steep angle. And it's assumed that he lost control, but he even said that he was struggling. And you have to listen to it, dude. It's very, very sad and very compelling. And so I would implore you to listen to that and learn from that dude's mistake, and don't be that guy with 330 hours. Like, be careful, be humble, and know when to say no.
And look, And the other thing is too, it may not be a no, but it may be a, hey, we got to hire a mentor pilot to go with us on this trip today. I haven't been to this airport, or this weather is, whatever the factor is. There's no shame, especially in a single pilot airplane, bringing on someone with more experience than you to be able to mentor you on a certain trip. So
the other thing too is that any smart single engine or single pilot operator, even the ones with tons of experience, always reserve the right to bring another pilot along if the conditions dictate. Because you can tell, dude, when you're going into a busy airport and the weather's crappy and yada yada yada, and it's all getting stacked on. Yeah, it's a long day. Whatever. Those are the times when you bring somebody else, you bring some help, and so that's also really good advice.
Yeah, and look,
we'll post a link to this San Diego situation, that one that we watched while we were on vacation.
You keep saying we'll post a link to all this stuff, and then it's on me to
let me
remember.
rephrase that. Dylan will post a link to this.
Dylan has to remember what we talked about and then find the link. And then the last thing I'll say, it's an incredible opportunity you have. Yes, at low time. Try and set the precedent early on how you're going to do it. And if you're going to get pushed into a corner that it's unsafe, or you're going to get bullied around, then it may not be an opportunity worth pursuing. And maybe that's not the case. You don't know. I mean, what's the principle like? All the other thing is,
you have the benefit of being in the military for 20 years.
Yeah.
So you've seen what leadership looks like.
Yep.
And it shouldn't be an issue, I wouldn't think.
Yeah. Last thing I will leave you with, on another completely sort of non-aviation thing, the thing that can get you into trouble when you're managing an airplane, especially if you don't know much about it, maintenance. I would try to network into, hopefully you have a director of maintenance. If you don't, try and find a local resource that'll help you keep up on it. I've seen a lot of guys get cooked because they either didn't know what the maintenance program was like, or they were not prepared, right? So, there's an inspection that's going to keep the airplane down for 6 weeks. That needs to be communicated early and often to the boss, and they are prepared for that. Here is the budget. Here is how I get quotes from different repair facilities to do that. There's a lot that goes into the maintenance of the airplane. I don't know your specific situation, but that's one that can spiral out of control pretty quick, especially if you don't really have any experience kind of managing a turbine airplane. Anything else, Max?
So just do all that stuff. You'll be fine.
Yeah, just do it. It should be easy. You're all set. So go watch a YouTube video and you'll
scare
be all
the shit
set.
out of yourself. And then,
yeah, right.
But whatever. It's all that's good advice from people that have been there.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're gonna learn. You're gonna make some mistakes. And the other thing is too, you will make some mistakes. Hopefully not in the air, but in the management side, there's a learning curve. It's just the way it goes. All right. I think that's it for flight advice, Max. If you would like some flight advice, you can visit our website, 215podcast.com. There's an anonymous form you can fill out with your information, and we'll do our best to help you out with whatever your pilot quandary is. I really like this email. It's like different than like the normal, like, how do I get a job type thing or something. So it was good. I like hearing this. It's good. And he has the right attitude. He's is asking for help already, which is exactly what you need to. Love it. Okay. That is going to do it for this on the road episode of the 21.5 show. It's time to get back to our Marriotts. And what are you in a Hilton? I can't tell. Look at those drapes. What is going on? You can't tell? Hold on. I'm going to give you a hint. Ooh, 2 beds. No, look at the bed though. Look how comfortable that looks. Is that a DoubleTree? No. What, did you see a cookie wrapper somewhere? Yeah. No, that's a Westin. That's a Westin. The heavenly bed. Of course, I should have known that. God, amateur. All right. Thanks to all of the sponsors that make this show possible. Harvey Watt, Advanced Air Crew Academy, Timothy P. Pope, Barris Jet Sales, Pro Pilot World, the Air Comp Calculator, the Amigo, our friends over at the Amigo Aerotow Group. What a show. Are you done? What a deal. What a deal. All right. Until next time, remember, flexibility
is the key to air power.
All right. See ya.
Next time.
The statements made in this show are our own opinions and do not reflect, nor were they under any direction from any of our employers.